The fluorescent lights in the store suddenly went out. Dennis Miller shouted, "Shut your mouth! You have no idea who you're messing with, Alex." He shoved the new janitor, knocking the clipboard from his hands. Alexander Sterling, known here as Alex Stone, didn't move an inch. He calmly took his phone from his pocket, his face unreadable, almost cold. "Actually, Dennis," the CEO's voice carried through the silence, "I think I know more than you realize." He pressed a button. Miller's own voice filled the tense air, recorded just the night before. "Carmen Reyes is the perfect target. She needs that insurance for her daughter. She'll put up with any abuse I throw at her." 15 employees froze. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. Every gaze turned toward Dennis Miller. His face had gone ashen. 48 hours earlier, Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Retail Tech, stood in a dim men's restroom, wearing a stiff new janitor's uniform with the name Alex Stone. He took out his phone, not to check messages, but to monitor his heart rate. Old habits from his years as an FBI hostage negotiator died hard. He was investigating his own billion-dollar empire after a stream of suspiciously perfect internal reports. The first crack in the facade came from the desperate sobs of Carmen Reyes, a janitor whose pain wasn't just sadness, it was the sound of a family breaking apart. Carmen revealed the truth. Her manager, Dennis Miller, had been cutting her work hours in a calculated way, making sure she'd lose eligibility for health insurance. If that happened, her daughter Isabella's life-saving bone marrow transplant would be canceled. The stakes weren't corporate profits anymore. They were life and death, and Xander felt the weight of that squarely on his shoulders. He slipped a hand into his gray uniform pocket, his thumb quietly pressing the record button on a tiny device. At that moment, Dennis Miller appeared at the end of the hallway, grinning smugly, a red pen twirling in his hand as he stared straight at Carmen. The storm had begun. Alex Stone and Carmen Reyes returned to the sales floor. Carmen held her rag tightly, shoulders hunched, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her eyes warned Alex not to draw any attention. Just then, Dennis Miller appeared from the corner aisle, striding forward with rough impatience. The manager badge on his chest gleamed like a badge of honor. "Reyes!" His voice cracked through the air like a whip. Carmen flinched and straightened immediately, her face carefully neutral. "Yes, Mr. Miller." "What's this floor supposed to be?" Miller tapped the spotless tile with the toe of his polished shoe. Alex could see his own reflection in it, proof it was immaculate. It's clean, sir," Carmen stammered. "Clean?" Miller scoffed. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a venomous hiss. "I see dust. I see laziness. What have you been doing for the past hour?" Alex felt blood rush to his head. His instincts as a former agent urged him to step in, but he forced himself to stay still. His fists tightened until his knuckles turned white, a silent war between his protective instinct and his undercover CEO strategy. "I'll clean it again, sir," Carmen murmured, lowering her head. "You'd better," Miller spat, his face twisted with contempt. "And next time, focus on your job instead of feeling sorry for yourself. I need to see you in my office. Now." Carmen walked away, her petite figure shrinking under the harsh, fluorescent light. Alex moved toward the electronics section, where he ran into Michael, a tech associate. "Poor Carmen," Michael muttered. "That's the third time this week he's called her in." "What does he say to her?" Alex asked quietly. Michael glanced around nervously. "The same thing he says to all of us. That we're lucky to have this job. That people like us, immigrants, single moms, folks without degrees, should be grateful for whatever hours we get." Xander's jaw tightened. People like us. That was the card Miller played to divide and control. Through the glass wall, they could see Miller pulling out Carmen's timesheet. He uncapped his favorite red pen. Michael whispered, He's cutting her hours again, probably writing her up for something fake, like taking an extra break. Last week he docked 3 hours from Tina, she's pregnant, for using the restroom too often. The detail made Xander's stomach turn. This was a systematic manipulation disguised as efficiency. He quietly opened the voice recorder on his phone and placed it near a small air vent. The sound carried clearly through the thin wall. "I've told you before, Reyes." Miller's voice slithered through, cold and deliberate. "If you can't handle the workload without getting too emotional, maybe this isn't the right job for you." "Please, Mr. Miller." Carmen's voice was barely audible. "I just need steady hours." "Your personal problems aren't my concern," Miller snapped. "What concerns me is that you are talking to other employees about schedules." "That sounds like troublemaking to me." He paused, his tone dropping to a chilling calm. "Now, I'm cutting you down to 12 hours next week. And if I hear you discussing schedules or company policy again, we'll have to talk about whether you still belong here." Alexander Sterling stood frozen. He had the confession, the threats, the manipulation, but the deeper system behind this abuse was still hidden in the shadows. After the tense confrontation earlier that day, Xander decided the night shift was his only chance to find physical proof of the systemic fraud. He volunteered to cover it immediately. The store was empty, the fluorescent lights casting long, threatening shadows across every aisle. Midway through the shift, Dennis Miller appeared. He walked straight up to Alex Stone, Xander in disguise, and barked an order. "Stone, I need you to move all those pallets from the stockroom to the sales floor, alone." Xander stared at the towering wall of cardboard boxes, work meant for 4 people. He clenched his jaw, realizing Miller's motives weren't just about saving labor costs. The man was feeding his ego by watching others struggle. Carmen had already warned him that Miller had cut the night crew down to 1 person, forcing her to do twice the work just to keep her job. As Xander wrestled with the 3rd pallet, a shadow appeared. It was Gary, the sales floor supervisor, known for his fake charm and unquestioning loyalty to Miller. "Well, look who's actually working," Gary said with a syrupy tone. "Nice to see someone earning their paycheck instead of gossiping. You know, Miller values loyalty. He's been cleaning house around here." He stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. "Between us, rookie, you'd better stay away from Reyes. She's in trouble, always whining about her hours and insurance. If you ever want to move up in this company, report any disruptive behavior from her directly to Miller." Xander took a steadying breath and forced a meek reply. I just want to keep my job, sir." When Gary left, Xander went to Carmen. "He's using you to scare everyone," he whispered. Carmen looked at him with hollow eyes. "I know. But what choice do I have, Alex? Isabella's transplant surgery was moved up to next week. I can't lose my job now. If I lose the insurance, my daughter will die." Her words hit Xander like a physical blow. The stakes were no longer about paychecks. They were about a child's life running out of time. "I'm taking the office trash out," he said quietly. Carmen's eyes widened. "Mr. Miller doesn't like anyone near his office when he's doing paperwork." "I'll be quick." Xander slipped down the hall. Through the narrow crack of the office door, he saw Miller hunched over a computer. The cold glow of the monitor revealed the truth. Miller was logged into the company's timekeeping system, reducing work hours for multiple employees. Even worse, he was transferring those stolen hours into a shadow account labeled D. Miller Jr. It was a form of organized wage theft. Fury surged through Xander's chest. He raised his phone and started recording the screen as evidence. Then Miller opened another program, the health insurance database. He pulled up Carmen Reyes's file and with a few cold clicks, changed her status from full-time eligible to part-time temporary, cutting off the insurance her daughter desperately needed for the transplant. The office phone rang. 2 short rings, 1 long. Xander quickly activated the voice recorder on his phone and ducked behind a storage cabinet. Miller's smug voice filled the room. I told you, Carmen's the perfect target. She needs that insurance for her kid. She'll take any abuse I throw at her. He went on, boasting about falsifying HR records to protect himself and how he'd been running the same scheme in other stores. Who's gonna believe them? A bunch of immigrants and dropouts against a regional manager with spotless performance reviews? Xander closed his eyes. He had everything, the irrefutable proof. When the call ended, Miller didn't stand up right away. Instead, he stared at his cell phone on the desk, his eyes narrowing with suspicion, as if he'd just received a security alert or a message from someone who knew too much. After recording Miller's confession and capturing his screen, Alex Stone, Xander, returned to the sales floor, his heart still pounding. He knew he had to keep everything quiet, but the long night shift and the emotional weight had left him drained. Carmen appeared, her face ashen with fear. Mr. Miller told me to clean the electronics section again, and he said, "What did he say?" Xander asked. "He said if I do it well, he might give me 4 extra hours this weekend, but I absolutely mustn't tell anyone." Xander recognized the offer for what it was, Miller's cheap bribe to isolate Carmen before Isabella's transplant. He swallowed his anger and forced himself to adopt the tone of an ordinary janitor. "Okay, keep cleaning. I'll take out this trash from the office. I saw some things left in there." Xander moved quickly into Miller's office. He rifled through the trash, hunting for anything tied to D. Miller Jr. or Carmen's insurance file. He found no official paperwork, but a crumpled sticky note caught his eye. Unfolding it, he read Miller's handwriting. Reyes, minus 15 hours. Miller Jr., plus 15 hours, SSNXXXX. Tina, minus 10 hours. Miller Jr., plus 10 hours, maternity allowance. The note proved the fraud was more than digital manipulation. It was a planned hit list. This paper, combined with the recording and screen video, formed airtight evidence. Xander slipped the note into his uniform pocket. He had enough proof now. He could call corporate security and end it all. But he wanted Miller to be forced to admit his crimes publicly, so no one could later claim Alex Stone had framed him. He stepped back out where Carmen was scrubbing the floor. She coughed, clutching her chest. "You're not all right," Xander said, voice tight with worry. "Just tired," Carmen panted. "I have to finish. I have to keep this job." Exhaustion and fear were consuming her. Xander checked his watch. At 6 a.m., Miller would be back any minute to end the shift. Suddenly, the store alarm sounded, a single sharp chime used only for internal emergencies. Dennis Miller bolted from his office. He didn't look at Xander or Carmen. He ran straight for the parking lot, toward his luxury car. "What's happening?" Carmen asked, voice trembling. Xander said nothing. Years of crisis work had taught him that Miller wasn't simply leaving the building. He was running from something. Xander glanced at the lot, then back to Carmen. "I don't think Miller's coming back to work today," he said. Just then, Michael from electronics came barreling out of the break room, phone in hand. "Alex, you see this? He's calling an emergency meeting. He wants everyone at customer service right now. He says it's urgent, inventory related." Michael leaned close and whispered something that made Xander's blood run cold. "I overheard him tell Gary, we have to get Reyes to sign the commitment before it's too late." The customer service area was eerily silent. 15 employees stood in a half circle. Carmen, Michael, and Tina among them. Tina visibly pregnant. Dennis Miller walked in, clutching a thick clipboard. Gone was his usual smugness. Sweat glistened on his forehead as he tried to hold his authority together. "All right, everyone, listen up," Miller announced, his voice trembling slightly. "We've got serious inventory issues. Starting now, any mistakes will be deducted directly from the responsible employee's paycheck. This is a new regional policy." His eyes swept the group, hunting for an easy target. They landed on Carmen, who tried to stand tall. I know some of you might think this is unfair, he said, his tone sharp and mocking. But maybe if certain people focused on their work instead of their personal problems, we wouldn't need policies like this. Alex Stone stepped forward. Actually, Dennis, there is something unfair here, but it's not what you think. Miller's neck tensed, veins rising. Stone, what are you trying to say? Alex didn't answer with words. He pulled out his phone and held it up, displaying a photo of the crumpled sticky note he'd found in the trash. Reyes minus 15 hours. Miller Jr. plus 15 hours. Miller stared at it. The color drained from his face as panic replaced arrogance. What is this? He stammered. It's proof of systematic wage theft, Alex said evenly. That's why your performance reports look so excellent. You're not saving labor costs. You're stealing from your team. He turned to Carmen. Your daughter's health insurance is being canceled before her transplant? That's part of this list. He did it on purpose. Carmen covered her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. Michael and Tina looked at Miller with open disgust. Miller tried to regain control. This is slander. You're just a janitor. Alex's smile was cold. Then how about this? He raised the phone again and played the recording. Miller's voice filled the room, clear, undeniable. I told you, Carmen's the perfect target. She needs that insurance for her daughter. She'll take any abuse I throw at her. Who's going to believe them? A bunch of immigrants against a regional manager with perfect performance reviews? Silence fell. Miller's hands trembled as sweat rolled down his temple. You recorded me illegally, he shouted. Not in Michigan, Dennis, Alex replied, his tone steady and commanding. It's a one-party consent state. Perfectly legal. He stepped closer, slipping a hand into his wrinkled uniform pocket, not for his phone, but for something far more powerful. He drew out a solid gold CEO badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. My name isn't Alex Stone, he said. I'm Alexander Sterling. I own this company. And you, Dennis Miller, you're done. The moment was shattered as the front doors burst open. Two men in dark suits strode in, broad-shouldered, authoritative. They weren't store security. One wore an FBI badge on his belt. The other was the global head of human resources for Sterling Retail Tech. The HR director looked directly at Xander. Mr. Sterling, we've received your visual and audio evidence from the company servers. We already have a warrant to seize all accounts tied to D. Miller Jr. Miller collapsed. Whatever fight he had left vanished. Xander nodded to the two men. Then he turned back to Miller. You're under criminal investigation, Dennis. You're being taken into custody. Finally, he looked at Carmen, who was sobbing quietly. His voice softened. Carmen, your daughter's surgery will go forward. Right away. The customer service area had been cleared to serve as an emergency meeting room. 15 employees stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on Dennis Miller. His face burned with anger he couldn't contain. He clutched a thick clipboard, desperate to regain control. Listen up, Miller barked, his cheeks flushed. What Stone threw out earlier was personal slander. I called this meeting to make it clear I'm not the only one under attack. He swung the heavy clipboard for emphasis. I've spoken with regional HR. They're investigating Michael for leaking company information. And Tina, you're being investigated for falsifying leave records to abuse maternity benefits. Michael stepped back, blood draining from his face. Tina cradled her belly, tears gathering fast. And you, Reyes, Miller said, turning on Carmen, his voice dropping to a threat. I have proof you've been disruptive, complaining about scheduling and trying to organize a covert walkout. HR already prepared your disciplinary file. He tossed a thick stack of papers at her. Sign this. It's a voluntary resignation to avoid being fired for gross misconduct. Sign it, Reyes, or your daughter loses any chance at health insurance. Carmen stared at the papers, hands shaking hard. The urgency of Isabella's transplant left her paralyzed. Alex Stone stepped forward. She's not signing anything. Miller snapped toward him, features twisted with rage. Who are you to interfere, Stone? You're a new janitor. You have no authority here. You're the trash of Sterling Retail Tech. He shoved Alex, forcing him back a step. Carmen let out a sharp scream. The others drew away. They had seen Miller's real power crush people. Alex took a slow breath, the trained calm of a hostage negotiator settling in. He lowered his voice. You called me trash. You called Miss Reyes trash, but we're not the thieves here. You cut her hours, stole Michael's wages, and denied Tina's maternity benefits. You did it all to protect one secret. Shut up! Miller lifted a hand as if to strike. I don't have any secrets. Local police are here, an employee shouted from the window. Hearing the word police made Miller strangely bold. He turned back to Alex with a crooked, mocking smile. I'm not afraid of the police. I've got someone backing me. Do you think a CEO like you can reach me? I've got proof that covers me. He strode to a small office safe and yanked it open. He pulled out a thick file and slammed it onto the desk. All my inventory and payroll records were reviewed and approved by my superior. If I go down, he goes down with me. You won't dare. He glared at Xander, daring him. You've said enough, Dennis. A cold, steady voice came from the doorway. A tall, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair stepped in, dressed in a black suit. Henry Davison, the regional COO of Sterling Retail Tech, the superior Miller always bragged about. The room went silent. Color drained from Miller's face. Davison's eyes burned into Miller, then shifted to Xander with a stunned respect. He walked straight to Miller. Dennis Miller, he said, his voice carrying through the hush. You thought you could blackmail this company by using my name as a shield? He turned his phone so they could see the screen. An active call was displayed. Per the CEO's instructions, I've monitored all your calls since last night, including the one you just made to me. Davison faced Miller fully. Mr. Sterling, Alex Stone, already has everything. But I have one question for you, Dennis. Who actually helped you create the D. Miller Jr.'s account? Alexander Sterling, now fully revealed as the company's CEO, stood surrounded by his employees as Dennis Miller was led away in handcuffs. He took off the grimy Alex Stone janitor shirt, revealing the tailored suit beneath. I don't owe him an explanation, Xander said, his voice steady, but I owe all of you a sincere apology. He looked at each person, his gaze resting on Carmen Reyes. I failed you, he admitted, his tone deep and calm. I spent too long in boardrooms, staring at Miller's perfect reports, and ignored the harsh reality beneath these floors. I let my system turn your desperation into someone else's profit. Xander pulled out his phone and called the global head of HR. Activate the emergency recovery plan, effective immediately. Reinstate Carmen Reyes's full-time health insurance, retroactive to her first day of employment. The company will cover every expense for Isabella's bone marrow transplant. Also, reimburse all stolen wages and penalties tied to Miller's fraud, plus $14,847 in unpaid salary within 48 hours. Carmen broke down, but this time her tears were tears of relief. Xander turned to Tina. Tina, you'll start your paid maternity leave right away, and your position will be waiting when you return. All of you will have your hours, benefits, and legal protection restored against any false accusations made by Miller. He stepped toward Carmen and helped her to her feet. Ms. Reyes, you've shown extraordinary leadership under unbearable pressure. You understand how this store truly works. I'd like to offer you the position of store manager. Carmen froze. I'm just a floor cleaner. I've never managed anything. You have something better than traditional experience, Xander said with conviction. You have empathy and endurance. You've been managing the impossible for 3 years. Running a store will be far easier. You'll receive full leadership and business training. The starting salary is $65,000, plus bonuses tied to employee satisfaction. He turned to Michael. Michael, you don't need a college degree. You need honesty and loyalty to your team, qualities you proved last night. You'll be the new assistant manager. Xander looked around the room. Starting today, every Sterling Retail Tech branch will establish an employee council. It'll be elected by the staff and have direct access to senior leadership, including me. No retaliation, no intimidation. If anything like Miller ever happens again, you'll have a direct line to stop it. He continued, his voice firm but warm. All regional managers will undergo intensive training on unconscious bias and identifying systemic abuse of power. Performance metrics will now focus on employee satisfaction and retention, not just cutting labor costs. Xander announced the creation of the Isabella Reyes Fund, a company-wide emergency fund to help employees facing medical or personal crises, ensuring no one ever has to choose between their family's health and their paycheck. He took an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Carmen. Inside was a gift card for a grocery store. I bought this back when I was Alex Stone, he said softly, because I saw how hard you've all fought just to afford the basics. Use it to get something nice for your daughter. And one more thing. Xander reached into his jacket and pulled out the old manager's badge, the one he'd taken from Miller. He handed it to Carmen. This was Miller's badge. Keep it, not as a reminder of fear, but as a reminder that real power isn't in a badge. It's in the courage to stand up for what's right. Carmen smiled through tears. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Thank you for seeing us as people. Xander looked at the 15 employees whose faces had shifted from fear to hope. I'm not doing this for gratitude. I'm doing this to make things right. True leadership means using power to protect the vulnerable, not to exploit them. The truth had been revealed. The system was being rebuilt. If you've ever witnessed injustice at work, or if you have the power to change it, share this story and comment below on what kind of reform matters most to you. Carmen Reyes, now the store manager, smiled as sunlight streamed through the windows. For the first time in 3 years, she felt its warmth. Her daughter would live, and she had reclaimed her dignity.